Welcome to Do Your Dailies, the podcast designed to help you on your journey of addiction recovery. We're going to go through the big book of AA and use our collective experience, strength, and hope to help you understand what addiction recovery really looks like. So grab some snacks, sit back, press play, and dig deep. Thanks for being here. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Do Your Dailies podcast. My name is Chris. We're so glad that you're here today. Joe and Dave, how are you guys doing?
Chris, thanks for asking. Today's just a beautiful day in Utah where it's been very sunny and we're just about the point of getting to the 4th of July, and it's a beautiful summer day here for us, and I've been looking forward to all of us meeting, and it's taken us some time to get together again, but I'm happy that we're here today and that we get to jump into more about alcoholism.
It is good to be here. I just have to say I had a great workout at the gym this morning.
You're letting that sink in. For us guys that are just kind of,
I know what that means, though.
Yep.
Someone asked me the other day, because I stepped away from my job a while ago, and they asked me with this voice of concern how I like retirement, and I said, I don't know anything about the word retirement, but I'm having a ball. I said I can't get enough of it, and it affords me the opportunity to do something like this, and as we continue to talk, I'm working with a couple of fellows, and I will say this, I was thinking on my way over what's happened to me in the last year or so as I've stepped away and then really done some more work is just the breadth and the depth of what happens if someone really dives into this work. I was just thinking about, I'm going to call them blessings or awarenesses or just leveling up of the way of life that I never dreamed could have existed in early recovery. So what I'm experiencing at age 67 wasn't even remotely in my wheelhouse back, when I was starting this work. So I guess what I'm saying to you listeners is you get the opportunity to listen to someone who's walked the path a bit and then experience some of the ups and downs, but far more ups than downs. And I think that's a powerful message. There's a fellow that I'm working with right now, and I tell him all the time, you just got to trust me on this one. Why would I lie? Mm-hmm. And if what I'm telling you does not add up and is not consistent or coherent with the way I live, then we need to stop talking. But if it's consistent and it seems to validate itself, then this work is real. And this is part and parcel the beginning of all of that. This is where I learned so much of these life principles, and I think that's a very important piece. So, yes, I am happy to be here.
Good.
And these young guys put up with me. And I will tip my head and look, see, I still have some feathers up there. Do you notice that?
Yeah, the other two. So you hit the gym, you've got the coverage up top, and Joe and I are just going to be envious. But that's okay. I'm happy for you. So let's dig in. To you listeners, this is episode 17 of the Do Your Dailies, the Big Book podcast. And at this point in time, if you're with us on the journey, what are you learning? What are you learning about the Big Book? What are you learning about alcoholism and addiction issues? What are you learning about yourself? I'd love those comments. I'd love that insight from you. What are you noticing along the way, along this path? So if you'll write into us, if you'll comment on the video, or whether you're on YouTube or Spotify or some other venue or program, what are you noticing about yourself? Let's celebrate those successes. Along the way, we're going to have slips. We're going to have falls. We're going to struggle. We know that as humans, but we're going to celebrate those little successes too. Let's put those together, piece those together. I think that really builds momentum and some strength. So jump in with us, whether you've got your physical copy or you're watching digitally. We're on page 33 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to go ahead and start reading this. And you guys interrupt me when you feel so inspired, when that feeling hits you. It says, this case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us have believed that if we remained sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. But here is a man who at 53 years found he was just where he had left off at 30. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol.
Now, I want to jump in here because this is so vital for us to really address in a meaningfully powerful and personal way. You know, when it's inviting us to really have no reservation, it's saying when we step into the abstinent-based part of this program, it's saying do it with your full heart. Don't just have a wavering attitude around it. Just understand that it's got to be all or nothing. It's not something that you just mess with. Like I won't drink for a year and then I'll go back to it. I mean, when it says this case, it's talking about this gentleman who stopped drinking in his 30s, and then at 55 he started taking it back up, and then it's going to jump into and talk very clearly about how quickly the disease grasps him again, and it's inviting us to take a cautionary look and say, okay, throw all into this, because it's not going to be something that if you go back to is going to be something that you're going to really like be able to control again. Even if you have a hiatus of like 20 or 30 years like this gentleman did, it still doesn't work. Dave?
Yeah, there's an interesting phenomenon that takes place here. Why would we stop in the first place? If we're truly of the alcoholic nature, why would we stop? Well, because the pain of change now makes it worthwhile. Before, the pain of what I was doing was at a certain level, but the pain of change was more.
Right.
So I'm going to stay with what I'm doing. So at some point, that ballast changed. And what was happening to me in my life, I was burning it to the ground, seemed to be greater than the difficulty, the pain of changing. And maybe that pain in part was, I don't even know how to do this. That's not what I want to focus on. The point that I want to really make here is that we decided to stop, given current circumstances. And then what happens over time, the obsession of the mind comes into play, and we get what I call revisionist history. And a very crafty skill set that the obsession has is it changes what happened. It talks us into it wasn't as bad, or that wasn't as severe as it was. And so we start to go down that rabbit hole, and we say, well, given enough time, if I got a new job, or if I moved over there, or I changed the where I go, or the who I go with, or just a variety of nuances, then maybe. So what happens is we get into this revisionist history and this strategizing over how to get in, and we forget about what the truth was about when I stopped. And somehow the passage of time mutes that a bit. And they make a comment in here that we have seen it demonstrated once and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, commencing to drink after a period we are in a short time as bad as ever. So it took us quite a while to ramp up to a certain level, and then we said stop. And you're looking at a man who can speak not anecdotally, but personally about it got to here and I said stop. And what happened is after a period of time, and it was quite a while, it wasn't 35 years, but it was years, a couple years, then started again, And what was phenomenal to me, if when I told myself the truth, is after a couple of years, I was worse than when I stopped the first time. So it just happens in a way that I believe once we introduce that again, all bets are off, and we just, at least I shouldn't say the wheels came off in a much faster rate. And they're giving us fair warning. And it says this case contains a powerful lesson. The lesson is only as good as we pay attention to what the lesson is. And the lesson is that after this long, he was comfortable. He took out the slippers and, then a bottle, and was dead, not very long after that. And so I don't think that's an anomaly. I think that's very much a common situation. So buyer beware here. And I think for some, it is such, we look at this with a degree of shame. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Am I an alcoholic today? Do I go around and say that and feel shame about that? No, I don't. It's just a fact of who I am. It's part of my DNA. It's however it came, whatever the cause is, all of it. It's just a fact, and it's part of the cards I was dealt, and I got to play those cards. And this may sound very, very strange, but because of that condition, I was exposed to these life-saving principles, and I believe, and I'll say this very candidly, I believe the depths of where I got to because of the principles, the life-saving principles, I've risen above where I would have been had I never experienced that, because of the clawing, the pulling out of it, the doing of the work, the honesty, the rigorous honesty, all of that took shape around me, and I needed a lot of coaching and help. But my point is I think those life-saving principles have come to bear in a way that advantaged me in a great way, and maybe better than I would have. Do I wish alcoholism on everybody? Of course not. I wish these life-saving principles on everybody.
Right.
You mentioned the shame that comes with it, and I think there's a great difference, and we need to mention this. There's a great difference between an alcoholic or addict in active addiction, in active use, or someone who's in early recovery, someone who's recovering, someone who's recovered. There's a lot of difference on that spectrum of what recovery looks like, what sobriety looks like. And I think there are parts of the brain that and maybe parts of society that want to take people back to the darkness, as bad as it was. And maybe our shame that we have leads us there too, where we feel like we're not good enough, we're not worth it, we're not worthy, or we're inadequate. And not that we want people to be overly confident or complacent or something like that, or take this lightly, but to understand this can be done, and it's not that complex, to follow the principles. But along the way, I think, again, like I mentioned earlier, we'll stumble. That's part of the human condition. That's part of this experience and this journey. But practicing the principles so that today, in this moment, here's what I stand for, here's what's important to me, and here's what I'm doing about it. And I'll get to tomorrow when the time is right, when I get there. That doesn't mean we ignore that tomorrow's going to happen, that it's coming, but the most important moment is this moment. So,
and Chris, in that moment, deciding and putting a parameter in, after a year, after 2 years, maybe I can drink again. So tomorrow morning at 9:30, I'm going to get on an airplane with my wife, and I'm flying to San Diego, California, to watch my grandson play baseball. We just got back from Cooperstown, New York, watching my other grandson play baseball, his brother. The reason we went there and the reason we're going here is because we were invited to go, to watch them. My son looked at me, and he's 40, extraordinarily successful, and he said, just fly around the country with us watching baseball. We'll have a ball watching football. And I said, okay. I could care less about pro football, but I'll go anywhere to watch my grandsons. My point here is that if I juxtapose the notion of it's been X number of years and now I can have a drink versus I can get on a plane and go watch my grandson play baseball, those two choices aren't in the same universe. And I know as sure as I'm sitting right here right now, that if I choose the former, the latter will never happen again, ever. Why would I do that? Why on earth would I jeopardize that kind of blessing in my life to go and to go to dinners and laugh, and we're going to go to the beach, and why would I jeopardize it?
Well, I would say that you don't want to jeopardize it because you realize one thing that we're talking about here that they're alluding to, but they haven't really kind of like fully sprung on us yet. It's like you understand the fragility of your condition. You understand that it is not something that just materialized out of nothingness. You had to put work and effort into it, and you also had to be involved in the fight to understand your limitations. See, the thing with alcoholism is it reminds me of teenagers. Teenagers think they're invulnerable. I mean, they really do have a Superman concept to life, and like the whole idea or notion of being weak or even vulnerable to harm, and the alcoholic is very similar to that. They have this Superman complex when it really comes to this idea that they have vulnerabilities or that something will get to them because of how alcohol plays on the mind and the condition that we have when we think about it. And I really appreciated that because as you were talking, I was remembering my own experience with alcoholism and what that experience was like for me. And when it comes to like really in-depthly getting honest, okay, I've had to be very honest with myself about the fact that, I know if I go back to alcohol or when that day ever occurs, there isn't going to be this situation where I just have one. It's going to be a situation where I'm going to push the boundaries again and again and again because that's the way I did it before. And that's what they're inviting us to remember here too, is like that vulnerability of how we stop at this point and then we think we've got control is an illusion. And once that illusion hits us, it can take us to a point to where we don't see that progressive nature, how quickly it jumps upon us to take us into the danger zone, that then our life is in the balance because everything else has gone. There is no more attachment to things because the only thing that really seems to matter is this relationship with alcohol and me. I think we need to be very honest with that because that's the way, Dave, I was hearing you talk about it, because I'm just like, that's the one thing that for most addicts and alcoholics, we're very well aware of when we get into this thing called recovery. But when we're in addiction, we really don't see it because there is this quality of perception that is lost in addiction. That when we're in recovery, we have a different perspective because we understand the fragility of recovery, and we also understand the magnitude and the scope of how precious it is and valuable, and we don't want to risk it.
Yeah. I have a really close person to me. Joe, you know her. I believe she's about to celebrate 7 years of sobriety here in a couple of days. And this disease of addiction, of alcoholism, almost killed her. And I remember, it doesn't feel like it was 7 years, 7+ years ago now, but flying to Texas and all but kicking down a door to You mentioned Superman a moment ago, putting her over my shoulder and walking down a flight of stairs and throwing her in the back seat of a car to get her to the emergency room. We often forget how fragile life is. And when I look at a chemical or a drug or a drink or a behavior, casino, a relation, whatever it is, we're looking for that dopamine release. We're looking for an escape. We're looking for pleasure and the avoidance of pain. And I think even with a period of sobriety, this part of our body, this part of the brain knows exactly what that level of pleasure is. And we can smell it. And we can go into autopilot if we're not careful and fall back into old patterns. So yeah, that word fragility, I think, is important for us to not become complacent. But as you guys were talking, I was also thinking about what's most important to me in this life. What do I love doing? You're talking about spending time with family, and Dave, you so eloquently talk about the difference between, and I don't know that you've used the word obligated, but there are families and maybe some listeners where it's like, oh, it's family, so you've got to go. You're obligated to be there, or that's just what you do. But you differentiate between that obligation and they want you there. They desire for you to be there, for dad to be there, for grandpa to be there, you know? And what a cool experience. Because the hell that people can get into, if someone's an addict or an alcoholic, like the hell, when you're really in that space, because there are people who problem use and problem drink all the time that aren't necessarily addicted, but the hell that somebody goes through, then to be on the other side of that, actively working a program, realizing I'm not there yet. I'm not at some destination. I'm a work in progress still, you know? And so savoring those moments and getting to travel, getting to go do the things that you do in your quote unquote retirement, you know, the excitement that's there where, man, to a listener and a viewer, if you're looking at maybe the last few months of your life, the last few years of your life, feeling stuck, feeling trapped, feeling like, what's getting in the way? Whether you're sober or not, what is getting in the way? What's stopping you from living, from experiencing life, excitement and joy and all of this? I think one of the core factors there is, what are my priorities? What are my values? What's most important to me in my life? So, yeah, maybe it's a chance for each of us to kind of take a step back and just do a little assessment, a little evaluation. Am I where I want to be right now? Not where do I want to be when I'm retirement age, right? Not where do I want to be down the road, but am I pleased with where I am now? What were you going to say, Dave?
Well, does it elicit conversation? Do my grandkids want to talk? My grandson made an interesting comment. He said, Mom and Dad, they can go out. Grandpa can tend. We just sit and talk. He'll just sit and talk to us. And I don't really do much talking. I just ask questions. So we'll sit down. They'll come in our room and they'll get around me, and I'll look at the older one. He's 12, and I'll ask him about Cooperstown. I know what he's going to tell me. I'm going to say, what was one of the great moments of Cooperstown? And he'll get all excited, and it'll be the two boys and myself. Mm-hmm. Which tells me that my son and his wife trust me to be with their boys, that we're going to leave good residue. That I don't say that lightly. That's a big deal to me. And he's going to say, when I stood up there and the bases were juiced and we were behind and it was the bottom, and if I struck out, we lose the game, and he stands up there and just pummels one. It's gone. And he comes around second base, and now the kids have this deal where they jump up in the air and they pretend that they're putting a sword, after they've delivered the death blow. He's coming down the second base line, and that's recorded, and we've got it. And he goes clear up in the air. I mean, I was in tears. Was it because he won the game? Yeah, well, okay. But I got to be there. The hugs and all of it, and when he came around, my message is this. There is nothing that even comes close to the bounty of a recovered life in doing this. And I'm not saying it's an easy road, it's challenging, but if you were to ask me, because I'll be on the beach, and is there going to be cold beer there?
You bet.
Yeah. Do I like beer? No. But it's cold. And I think, can you even imagine the shock in my grandkids and my wife if I come walking back over with one, and I'm just, to Joe's point, we're just going to have one. It's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll just let that one ride, because it is.
As you're talking about, again, that invitation and being there, and winning the game is a big deal, but it's those moments, it's those small moments that are so special. And it occurred to me that when we've lost something like that, then to have it given back to us, or let's say we earn it, let's use that term, for us to earn it back, it's even sweeter. It's even more special, because we know what it's like to have lost it. We know what it's like to be maybe uninvited to those things, or to be an afterthought for whatever reason. And we won't go into those today, but how special it is to be there in those moments, and how special it is to be here, no matter where we are, just literally noticing, here I am.
Well, that ability to be in the present and take it in and be there for family, because in our addiction, it's not there at all. Checked out, not present, always worried, always in that shame or guilt. The fear can be cut with a knife.
What's he gonna do this time?
Yeah.
What mess am I gonna have to clean up?
Yeah. Or the perfect one is what did I do? Hey, could you tell me where my car's at?
Forgotten.
I forgot where I parked it last night. How did we get home? Those are the terrible experiences, and they only add up over time. They don't get better either. That memory lapse, forgetting things, so I think the value of what we're really talking about is also added in what he continues to say there. And Chris, I'm just going to invite you to finish the page, because this next part I think is really important.
It says this right in the middle of 33. Young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they can stop, as he did, on their own willpower. We doubt if many of them can do it, because none will really want to stop, and hardly one of them, because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired, will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, had been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who had been drinking 20 years. To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time, nor take the quantities some of us have. This is particularly true of women. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers, who would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics, are astonished at their inability to stop. We, who are familiar with the symptoms, see large numbers of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere, but try and get them to see it. Now, what's that asterisk right there? down at the bottom of the page, what does this say? True, when this book was first published, but a 2014 U.S.-Canada membership survey showed about 12% of AAs were 30 and under. Huh.
I would like to come back and reiterate one more time one sentence, because this can be construed as quite negative and almost the death knell. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And I saw those words as quite negative. And then at some point they turned. And I said, that's part of me, okay. Well, I'm going to dive into the solution over and over again. I'm going to study it deeply. And that propels ever more learning and processing. And so that's the good news for me, that this is here, and I get to continue to discuss it today and all days in the future. But I don't see that as a condemnation. I mean, that word alcoholic has a lot of negative connotation, to be sure, but I look at it differently and say, all right, that's part of my deal, so be it. The next question is the most important one. What am I going to continue to do about it? I can wallow in it, or I can rejoice and say there is a tremendous solution, and the solution will give me gifts and things untold that I could never possibly have seen before, maybe never experienced. So,
I think the hopeful thing that I take out of kind of what's written on page 33 is that statement where it says, young people may be encouraged by this man's experience. I typically share with the people that I work with is like, experience means that you're learning. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's fun, but it means that you're learning. And for me, the experience that I had with my alcoholism was an experience. It's an experience in learning what I don't want to become and what I don't want to continue to swim in. I learned that lesson. Some people, though, they have to experience that lesson much longer than I did. I understand that. And I think that's the message that I'm taking out of kind of what we're reading today is like some people only have drank a short amount of time. Some people have drank an extensive amount of time. It's that experience that they have that allows them to learn to use that opportunity to know and to come to terms with the fact that they are in the grip of a progressive illness that only gets worse, it never gets better, and that we have to understand that part of our story is alcoholism, drug addiction, whatever ism that we're really referring to here that you're dealing with. Please understand that it's an experience that you're having, and for me, I choose to make that declaration that I'm a recovering alcoholic, but that's part of the journey that I've had. And I think if we try to shy away from that, it doesn't lend us to owning our experience and the truth of what that has given us. And I'm personally thankful and grateful for it, because if I hadn't come to terms with that, and I hadn't gotten to a point where I knew it beat me, I'd still probably, unfortunately, be in a situation where I'd still be in it.
It's profound to me there, that last section on page 33, that insult that comes up. And as a therapist, I really don't know the last time maybe I should be careful in making this claim. I don't remember the last time I declared to someone else, you're an addict or you're an alcoholic. That's something for us individually to determine. And in part because I think there's so much resistance when we're labeled. Mm-hmm. There's so much pushback when someone tells us something like that powerful, of that magnitude. But we also can't pretend there's no elephant in the room. We also can't act as if nothing's wrong, that everything's normal. And that's a lot of gray area to figure out how to approach this thing. We don't want to push someone away, but we can't pretend like everything's fine, right? Like everything's good. But yeah, would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics, are astonished at their inability to stop. And so, as you've mentioned many times, Dave, write out your history. Write out the facts. What's really going on here? And then evaluate it.
Yeah.
You know, I think as humans, we're very apt at or adept at noticing problems in other people. Sometimes we don't notice it within ourselves. And I think sometimes it's the exact opposite. We're very negative about ourselves and more positive about others. Neither one of those, I think, is accurate or healthy. We want to be balanced. We want to see it how it really is.
I'll put one more pitch in here. Why would someone go back? Well, because alcohol works for what it's designed to do. It numbs me. I don't like my current circumstance, and I haven't learned to adapt in any other way, so I'm going to go back to it. But it won't be as bad this time, or all the litany of excuses. What's very important here to note is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the program and working the steps provide that solution, that power that we needed, that we didn't have before, and we were using alcohol to medicate thoughts, feelings, pain, all of that, and this provides a solution to that. Just a quick note, there's a person that I'm working with, and we're working through the steps, and he's a very different person as he moves into work situations or other conversations. He said, Dave, I'm very different now. I'm approaching these things very different, and I don't understand why. And I said, well, because you've done the work. And we haven't, we're up through column 3, column 4 on step 4, but that requires an internal investigation. It requires some honesty. It requires some lateral thinking. Think about things in different ways. Get out of the myopic alcoholic mindset of it's all someone else. No, what's my responsibility? Which then creates a new skill set. And most people don't see that coming when they do the step work this way. They don't see that it's a much broader skill set that can be applied in other conversations with family, or we're not being dishonest or manipulative in any way. We're just being honest. And we've never done that before. So what I'm suggesting is that, at least in my case, the reason I went back drinking is because I had no reasonable substitute for it. I needed something to medicate what the issue was. Later, I look at it now and say, yes, after having done the work that we haven't even really started into yet, we're still talking about alcoholism. We haven't even started into the solution yet.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking you to do is to trust us that we're going to get to solution and power that will then empower you and enable you to look at life through a very, very different lens. And that's a tremendous blessing, and it's transformational is the way I would put it. So that came across my mind as well.
Guys, thank you. Again, it's good to spend this time with you. I appreciate so much your dedication to your recovery and to sharing the message. To our listeners and to our viewers, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Do Your Dailies podcast as we dig into the big book. We're glad you're here. We hope that you will stick around with us, that you'll believe in yourself, and that you'll share your success, your miracle with us and with those around you. Have a great rest of your day.
Be well.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Do Your Dailies Big Book podcast. If you like what you hear and you want more, please like and subscribe and share this show with your friends, with your clients, with your sponsees. That's the best way to support us bringing you more recovery content. You can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and X at Do Your Dailies. This podcast is sponsored by Hobble Creek Health and is edited and produced by Nielsen Digital.